Who exactly has the power to set the price of gas? Not the person you think it is. What's with gas prices? We're all hooked to oil, or so are you. We've all noticed that dinosaur juice is costly right now. Global petrol prices are at an all-time high, and US customers are paying up to $5 a gallon in Iceland and Norway. It's over 11 per gallon, but Biden blames Putin. We're told a gasoline crisis is pushing up the cost for everyone. But if that's true, why is Venezuela paying 10 cents per gallon? Who's to blame for high gas prices? Long story short, it isn't easy, but also relatively easy. Most people are puzzled, yet a tiny group earns a lot of money owing to high gas costs. To grasp this problem, we must first understand what we pay for when buying gas. Gas price breakdown. Globally, gas prices include government taxes, refining expenses, sales, and marketing. How much the gas station makes from selling you items varies by nation in the US. In the US, the gas tax is 20 cents per gallon, whereas in Australia, it's over $1.20 per gallon. But none of this matters since it's a minor percentage of the price you pay at the pump. In most nations, oil accounts for 50 to 60% of the total gas price. Many argue that gas stations cheat customers off or that government taxes make gasoline more costly. In actuality, oil makes up the majority of the cost of petrol. Oil price rises, gas price rises, and vice versa. This is the easy part of what I was talking about previously. Yet, in certain regions, oil prices rise. Gas prices have almost doubled in a year. The cost of gasoline is being pushed up by inflation. Now comes the difficult phase, since this is when everything starts to become tricky. Three distinct aspects contribute to the complexity of the current situation that has caused the price of oil to skyrocket. The first aspect of the problem is inflation. Governments often resort to printing large amounts of money to prevent the economy from collapsing completely. Things become more costly when more money is created because the lower the purchasing power of each dollar becomes as more dollars are in circulation. Because of this, the cost of oil will increase. As a result, we will not go into an excessive amount of depth regarding this topic since we have already spent a lot of time discussing inflation on this channel. Russia, or OPEC. Next, we'll discuss why oil is so costly. This year, Russia invaded Ukraine, and things became scummy. When a big battle is looming, countries store up an oil in case a worldwide war breaks out. This increases oil demand, which raises prices. Every time there's been a war threat in the previous 50 years, oil prices have surged due to increasing demand. Since the invasion, the West has slammed Russia with some of the harshest sanctions in history, preventing it from dealing with the globe. This has hurt Russia's economy. Russia's oil production is worldwide. This game regulates the world's oil supply. OPEC includes oil industry giants Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Iraq, Iran, and Kuwait. These countries own 80% of the world's oil reserves. Hence, they can control the worldwide oil supply. When you manage supply, you can control pricing. In 2016, OPEC added Russia as a new member. Imagine you're in a gang and OPEC Plus controls 90% of the world's oil. Your team maintains the world's necessities. What would you do if someone bullied one of your gang members? You'd make the world pay for punishing Russia. When there's a significant demand but not enough supply, prices skyrocket. Even though OPEC understands the world needs more oil, they're not willing to release it. Russia is thrilled with rising oil prices since it rewards its gang members and punishes the West. So this oil group is punishing you because your politicians wanted to punish Russia for invading Ukraine. The gang also profits from increased oil prices. A large oil gang controls most of the world's oil supplies. Regardless, there's one additional reason oil prices are so high. As always, it's because a tiny number of affluent individuals seek to manipulate the situation to their advantage. Oil firms set pricing. Okay, what's the final piece of the oil puzzle? It's all because of greed. In early 2020, a worldwide catastrophe shut down our globe. laying off workers and closing borders. The global economy halted. We require less oil. When people cease flying, traveling, and consuming, the worldwide shutdown reduced oil consumption and demand. Oil prices plummeted so dramatically that they briefly went negative for the first time in history as oil companies lowered prices to sell their goods. Oil prices plunged, which hurt the global oil industry's profitability. You must cut expenses to stay in business if nobody wants to purchase your oil. So oil firms accomplished this in the 2020s worldwide health crisis to avoid losing money. Oil firms dismissed tens of thousands of employees and closed facilities to meet decreasing demand. We stopped digging new wells, which enabled them to continue operating. 2 years later, in 2022, flights resumed and the economy grew. The world needs more oil, so you'd think oil firms would expand output to meet the demand. But they've told us to take a hike. Instead of restarting regular oil production, they're pleased to keep limiting it. With growing demand and insufficient supply, oil prices soar. Higher oil prices are suitable for the oil industry in general. Still, because oil corporations slashed their operating expenses 2 years ago, they're paying less to sell each barrel of oil, increasing their profit margins. This increases their first quarter income. Some of the world's top oil producers earned 3 times as much as they did a year ago. They're so rich, they have no reason to recruit additional personnel or dig more wells to meet demand. Shell says the present scenario is fantastic for shareholders, and they're not hiding it. The corporation is doing better than before. The CEO warned increasing oil output would cost shareholders. When asked whether Pioneer planned to boost oil supplies, CEO Scott Sheffield said shareholders want cash. Oil firms are generating more money than ever because of the perfect storm. Increasing oil supplies would affect their profit margin, so they wait. They don't limit the oil supply, thus oil prices soar. They're more lucrative than ever. Who's responsible? Oil prices are rising due to inflation, conflict, and greed. As long as these 3 causes remain, gas prices will likely remain high, despite the media blaming Biden and other politicians. Oil firms have spent billions pushing governments to adopt regulations and laws that benefit them. Politicians bear at least some of the responsibility. In the US, that's approximately $500 million. Our politicians might compel businesses to raise output or sell it at a reasonable price. But they don't, because oil money funds their re-election efforts. They don't want the flow of dirty money to stop if they affect oil company earnings. If you're going to blame someone for high gas costs, blame Biden or the country's leader, unless you're in Venezuela, where the government sets the price. You may somewhat blame Putin for invading Ukraine, but largely blame the oil business for taking advantage of a terrible situation to generate more money. As the phrase goes, never let a good problem go to waste. I hope you liked and learned something from today's video. If you want to keep improving and being inspired, subscribe and press the bell button to be alerted whenever we upload a video. This has been Market Profits Institute.